Cam Thomas getting waived at 24 is a sign of what the modern NBA actually values.
Thomas, your guy. What happened?
How does he say he got waived?
And why pure scoring without the right supporting skills can leave even explosive scorers stranded. Cam Thomas is a player who dropped 40 points multiple times, yet he suddenly finds himself unclaimed. 10 to 15 years ago, teams would have their balls tingling for a player who can get buckets on his own. But now there is a massive cost for players who are too one-dimensional. Chapter 1, the shock. A player who once averaged 24 per contest as a starter, now suddenly without an NBA roster spot. Points are the clearest, most visible currency in basketball, but they are not the only thing teams value anymore. That's why for Cam Thomas, there was no trade, no buyout, no immediate scramble of teams offering assets or future picks. For a player who has demonstrated elite occasional scoring, the market demand for him was non-existent. The only reported sniff came from the Bucks, who, let's be honest, were thirstier than your local hooker.
Signed with the Bucks. And unfortunately for Cam Thomas, the type of player that he is, the value of that player.
That lack of competition in itself is a story. It signals that teams viewed him as a low-cost potential filler rather than a sought-after upgrade. On a good team, he could be a great sixth man, someone to offer scoring from the bench, but that's it. Nobody sees Cam Thomas and player who can elevate their team. The optics of being waived are harsh for a young player. But chapter 2, pure scorer profile. Cam Thomas has never been a mystery as a player. He's a scorer, a first, second, and third. A shot maker who can create off the dribble, punish closeouts, and heat up fast enough to swing a quarter by himself. When he's rolling, defenses feel it immediately. He's the kind of player who can turn a quiet bench unit into a problem simply by getting hot. That skill matters. Teams always need someone who can manufacture offense when sets break down or when the primary option stalls. In isolation, Cam's archetype has value. The issue is how that archetype fits into the modern NBA. Teams today are less interested in one-dimensional production and more focused on players who add value even when they aren't scoring. Guards who keep the ball moving, wings who can switch defensively, players who make lineups function rather than just survive. Cam's strength is real, but it lives on a single axis. When evaluators look at him, the question isn't whether he can score, that's settled. The question is whether his scoring consistently lifts the group around him or whether it simply patches holes in short bursts. That tension between elite offense and overall lineup impact is the core issue shaping his value. Yet chapter 3, box score versus context. A stat line like 21 points in 22 minutes jumps off the page. It looks efficient, explosive, and convincing. Those are the numbers fans remember and highlights are built around. But box scores don't tell the whole story. That same game included 1 rebound, 1 assist, 4 turnovers, and no defensive events. Suddenly the performance looks different. It's not bad, but incomplete. Coaches don't just ask how many points were scored, they ask what happened to the possessions in between. This is where context matters. A player who scores but gives points back through turnovers or defensive lapses can quietly cancel out his own production. Over a full game, that math adds up. Advanced metrics exist for this exact reason, to measure whether a player's minutes improve or hurt the team once efficiency, defense, and decision-making are accounted for. A scorer who spaces the floor, makes simple passes, and protects possessions raises a team's baseline. A scorer who dominates the ball but bleeds value elsewhere creates volatility. That volatility can win you a quarter, but it can also lose you a game. Evaluating Cam means zooming out, not asking whether he can score, but whether his minutes reliably make the team better across all 48 minutes. Chapter 4, IQ and situational play. At the NBA level, raw skill gets you noticed. Decision making gets you trusted. Coaches obsess over situational awareness, knowing when to push, when to slow down, and when the simplest play is the best one. Many scoring specialists struggle here, not because they lack ability, but because their instinct is always to hunt the shot. That shows up in small moments, holding the ball half a second too long, missing an early dump off to a rolling big, turning an advantage into a contested attempt because the read came late. Those moments don't always look dramatic, but they matter. NBA possessions are too valuable to waste. A delayed pass can turn an open 3 into a defended one. A missed read can flatten an entire possession. Cam has shown flashes of these issues, not constantly, but enough for patterns to emerge. And coaches care about patterns more than highlights. They can live with missed shots, they struggle with repeated decision-making errors that chip away at team efficiency. This is often the dividing line between a scorer who closes games and one who watches from the bench late.
You're on the bench at the time. No comment.
Improve the reads, lower the turnovers, and trust comes quickly. Ignore them, and opportunity shrinks just as fast. Fi Bachra, Chapter 5. Fit, economics, and roster construction. On paper, Cam's contract situation looks simple. A 1-year deal around $6 million isn't restrictive, but roster building isn't just about money. It's about minutes, matchups, and trade-offs. Teams ask different questions than fans do. If Cam plays, who sits? Does that weaken perimeter defense? Does it force a scheme adjustment adjustment? Does it change rotation chemistry that's already working? Those are real costs. Front offices increasingly prefer players who solve multiple problems at once, defenders who can shoot, shooters who can switch, guards who can score and pass. Even when the salary is manageable, the operational cost of a one-dimensional player can be high. That's why the lack of market movement matters. When teams don't bid, it sends a signal, and not that a player lacks talent, but that teams don't see him as essential. Milwaukee's interest read more like a low-risk test than a must-have acquisition, reinforcing hesitation elsewhere. Once that perception forms, it's hard to shake. Chapter 6. Paths forward and comparison. There is a path back. It's been walked before. Scoring first players like Norman Powell and Jordan Clarkson extended their careers by embracing defined roles, short bursts, efficient shots, enough defense and passing to avoid hurting lineups. They became trustworthy. For Cam, the blueprint is similar, except a narrower role. Provide offense without hijacking possessions, cut turnovers, compete defensively, make the easy play consistently. Even modest improvements in those areas would raise his floor dramatically. Another option is a developmental detour, the G League or overseas, where he can reset perception, refine decision making, and show defensive commitment in a lower pressure environment. That route isn't a failure, it's a common reset button. The key point is that the talent isn't gone. What's missing is alignment between skill set and role. You are Chapter 7, reputation and the final take. The NBA runs on both logic and narrative. Once a player is waived and interest dries up, questions start multiplying. Is he coachable? Is he improving? Does he understand his role? Cam's brief, no comment response after being benched didn't help. Silence doesn't signal accountability, and uncertainty pushes teams toward caution. But reputations can change quickly. One stretch of cleaner play, better decisions, and defensive effort can reopen doors. The league is fluid. Rotations change. Injuries happen. Needs shift. Cam's current situation isn't an ending. It's a signal. A reminder of what the league values now. If he adjusts, there's still space for him. A team needing instant offense off the bench will always exist. But that opportunity requires trust, and trust is earned through consistency, not shot volume. Conclusion: what this means for the NBA. Cam Thomas's situation reflects a broader league trend. Pure scorers still matter, but they're no longer enough on their own. Teams want certainty, players who reliably contribute across possessions, not just highlight moments. For Cam, the options are clear: accept a smaller, defined NBA role and prioritize efficiency, defense, and decision making, or take a step back to prove growth elsewhere. Neither path is glamorous, both are realistic. This isn't about dismissing his talent, it's about aligning that talent with what teams actually pay for. If Cam embraces that recalibration, he can still be the kind of bench scorer who flips games, just not on his terms alone.